Hey everybody, Autism Fitness founder Eric Chessen, leading the movement for movement, bringing you another edition of Autism Fitness Tuesday training, where I take a strategy, a concept, something that we use to great success in autism fitness programming so that you can use it with your autism and neurodivergent life skill athletes. Before I get started, please like, definitely subscribe, and of course share these videos with people for whom it might make a difference if they're already running programs or if they are ready to embark in the fitness journey for their community. In this edition of Tuesday Training, I'm going to be talking about maximizing our total training time with our athletes, a lot of which can be lost in transitioning from one exercise to another. So I'm going to give you some proactive strategies and then also some strategies that you can utilize if you have an athlete who is getting dysregulated or getting off task or having difficulty going from one exercise to the other, or even starting out, which is often the case, the fitness session. So first we have to look at what is happening for our athlete and taking an empathetic approach to our coaching. Now, an empathetic approach doesn't mean that we are sympathizing with the athlete, saying, oh, I know that everything is hard and that it's too much and that it's overwhelming for you. The empathetic approach is more of taking the athlete's perspective when they are going through the training session, through the different exercises we have. And the best that we can understand our athlete, what their needs are, what their experience is with this session, the better equipped we are to support them. Now, a lot of these things we can do in advance, and a lot of these things are also going to come with time, with learning more about that athlete's particular profile, their capabilities, their communication, what reinforces them, what they're, of course, what they're motivated by. All of these things are going to play into our ability to coach and program as best as possible and support those athletes. So in the start of a session, we may have an athlete who has difficulty transitioning into the session itself. So they might be understimulated, they might be overstimulated, they might be hyper or hyposensitive to the environment as well. And this is something that it's great to have information coming into this session, but it's something that we'll learn about the athlete along the way. But a great way to be proactive in this situation is to have a visual schedule. For some athletes, it might just be text-based. For some athletes, it might be pictures. For some athletes, it might be both. Starting out with both is usually a pretty good idea, especially if this is your first session with the athlete. Even if you're already familiar with that athlete and that athlete is familiar with you, if you are just starting out the fitness journey with that particular athlete, they are likely, if not positively, going to be unfamiliar with the exercises, with the expectations, with the flow of the session, with the contingencies, what's happening first, second, third. We'll get more into that later. And how everything is going to be lined up. Like, what is the procedure right here? So a visual schedule is a great way to situate the athlete and a great way to start out the session. So athlete comes in, they go to their board. It has oftentimes a calming effect because it reduces the anxiety of not knowing what's happening next. And the best way to increase anxiety for anybody in any situation is to not have an idea of what the expectations are and to not know what is happening first, second, third, fourth, etc. But if we have a visual schedule saying first you have a choice between push throws and overhead throws, and then you have a choice between scoop throws and slams, and then we're going to go into our strength exercises. So first you have a choice between squats and push-ups, and then you have a choice between cable rows and overhead presses, and so on. This is going to situate the athlete and give them a much clearer sense of what the opportunities are and what the flow is of that session. So by being proactive and setting up that visual schedule or that program plan for that athlete, we may reduce the total transition time for them from the outside or the front of the gym or the front of the clinic into the fitness session itself. So that's number one. The second is transitioning between exercises. This is a big one because a lot can happen between the first set of squats and then the first set of overhead presses. Now, a number of different things can happen depending on that athlete's profile. For example, I have a few athletes that very much enjoy talking, and I enjoy having a conversation with them also because it is a great way to build rapport with those athletes. They want to be communicative, they have something that they're excited to share, or they have topics that they'd like to cover, sometimes over and over and over and over. But in these cases, sometimes we start to hear more and more talking, and the athlete is getting more into their story or more into the information that they want to share with us. And we start noticing that time is ticking away, and where we thought we had 16 minutes left, now we realize we have 11 minutes left because that athlete has been talking. This is where we want to intervene with some type of contingency. And it doesn't have to be harsh, and it doesn't have to be rude, and it needs to be respectful of that particular athlete while still maintain the expectation that this is a fitness session, we are doing power and strength exercises, and there is going to be a time where we need to start doing that exercise. So if I have an athlete that is starting to go deep into conversation, I might say to them, hey, I want to talk about this. I want to hear about it. First, you have this set of push-ups, and then I want to know all about the amusement park. Even if it's the 14th time that I've heard about this particular ride in this particular session, I'll still take it because I want to have that positive relationship, that interaction with that athlete. We just need to make sure that we're prioritizing the exercise there, because it's very easy in that transitional phase to lose track of time and say, oh, I had 3 or 4 exercises planned and now we're down to 2 or 3 because time has elapsed and I didn't know quite where to say, all right, we can talk about this. However, first, we need to get through this exercise, or we need to complete this exercise, right? And remember, during that exercise, I say remember like I've mentioned in this video already, but we are using positive behavior support all throughout the athlete completing that particular set of push-ups or overhead presses or band rows or whatever it is. So it's not to say that we are making this really harsh distinction or really clear distinction between getting reinforced with the secondary reinforcer, like the conversation, whatever that athlete wants to talk about, and the exercise itself, because we're using behavior-specific praise. We're making sure that the athlete has the coaching and cueing that they need. So we want this more seamless flow between the reinforcement that they're getting for completing the exercise to the best of their current ability, and when they complete that last repetition of that exercise, yeah, now let's have that conversation. For example, I have an athlete who will ask me a question and I will say, okay, after you're done with this set of overhead presses, I am happy to answer that. He finishes the set of overhead presses and then looks at me knowingly, and I'll say, oh yeah, I said that I would answer that question now, and I will certainly answer that question now. So if we have this type of situation, it is very easy to just create that contingency for that athlete. It doesn't even necessarily need to be done on a board or on a visual schedule for that athlete. If that athlete can process that information provided to them by the coach verbally, and we just say, hey, hold on to that question, let's finish this set, and then I'm happy to answer it. Very straightforward, concrete contingency. Now we have a situation where the athlete is getting dysregulated. Rather than wanting to talk and wanting to engage, they are disengaging from the situation, either in the transition from one exercise to another exercise, or oftentimes this happens with athletes who want to take an extended break. And this can absolutely turn into a time suck or a time leak. I've had sessions where I'm looking at the clock and saying, oh, this is great, we have 20 minutes left. And then that athlete decides that they are going to stay seated or stay lying down on the floor or on a bench or on a box. And then it starts to become this negotiation of, well, your minute break is up and now it's time to do band pull downs or cable rows or whatever the exercise is. We have a couple of different strategies that we can use here. So first is providing the contingency again and stating plainly to the athlete, hey, your break is finished. Do you want to do the cable rows first or do you want to do push-ups first? And giving them a choice, because once we set up that choice, now it is more clear, it may not be abundantly clear, but more clear for that athlete that we are offering them one thing or another, and the implication is that it's time to get to the exercise. But what happens if our athlete is still sitting on the floor or sitting on the bench or disengaged from the situation? Depending largely on the athlete profile, there are a couple different ways that we can branch out, or a couple decisions that we can make here. If we know that the athlete is going to have a really difficult time having some type of ask placed upon them right now, then we may say, hey, it looks like you need 30 more seconds of break time. Is that what you need right now? And the athlete may answer in the affirmative. And we can say, all right, I'm going to set my timer on my phone to 30 seconds, and then I'll come back and then we can start. This can often work well. However, sometimes we have a case where that 30 seconds is up and now the athlete is still sitting on the bench. And do we want to say another 30 seconds? Because almost guaranteed, then it's going to be another 30 seconds and it's going to continue on because the athlete has already been reinforced a second time by that 30 seconds. So once that 30 seconds is up, it's up. And what we can do is represent the opportunity for choice. Do you want to do the cable rows first or do you want to do the push-ups? And if the athlete is non-responsive or they don't seem like they want to commit to either of them, or they still seem like they are disengaged, we may take it upon ourselves as the coach to politely choose one and say, you know what, let's try the cable rows or let's try the push-ups. So let's go to that one station when you're ready. So if that athlete responds and they're up and they go to the cable rows or the push-ups, great. That is a win for everybody because now we're back on track with the exercises. However, sometimes the athlete is going to continue to remain on the bench or on the floor or wherever they are. And in that case, we may start taking the exercise to them. So changing the environment, and this I usually do with a band or a medicine ball, and just have the athlete grab onto a band, do a couple of band pull downs. Do they need to be with perfect or even excellent form? No, absolutely not. What we are doing here is scaffolding. We are building up behavioral momentum because the athlete has a low level of motivation right now. Well, I'll put that differently. The athlete has a high level of motivation to remain in break mode and not doing the exercise, and a very low motivation level to engage in that exercise. So what we want to do is bring the exercise to them, number one, because this is more avoidance behavior. And the second thing we want to do is use a low level of exercise demand, something that is not highly challenging for them, because we are almost guaranteed not going to get their best performance right now. But what we can do is start, again, getting that behavioral momentum where the athlete is having a small win and building back up to the point where they are willing to do that cable row or that push-up again. And this, when it is done consistently, really works for many of our athletes because what we are doing is reestablishing the expectation. Because if the expectation is if you just sit there, then you can take a break in perpetuity, then this is something that is likely to persist. But if the expectation is once the break is finished, the break is finished, and if you're staying in break mode, then we're just going to bring the exercise to you. Oftentimes the athlete will have that light bulb moment and say, okay, well, I'm ready to do the next thing. Now, the ultimately important thing here also is to make sure that we are following up, that we are honoring the commitment to that athlete, meaning when we say, all right, you can take a break now, or all right, what exercise do you want to do next, that we follow up with that. Because if we have this varied reinforcement for the athlete, then we're not developing trust with them. Like, they're not going to trust that we're going to give them a break if we say, well, you were supposed to have a break after this set of overhead presses, but why don't we do, one more set? That's not the way to develop trust. Developing trust with our athletes means we do the things that we say we're going to do when we say we're going to do them, because then the athlete is developing that sense of trust and, okay, this is how things work. Again, expectation management is really the key here. So those are a couple different strategies that we can use for athletes who get off task or they get dysregulated during transition. And this is a little bit different from the athlete needing to self-regulate in between sets. Oftentimes, our autism and neurodivergent athletes need a little extra processing time or a little extra sensory regulation time in between sets of an exercise, and this is totally fine. We want our athlete to show up during that set as present, as capable, and as ready as possible to perform that exercise to the best of their current ability. And if that athlete is dysregulated, that is going to interfere with their best performance. So rather than be go, 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 rush, 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 we want to use some of that transition time or some of that break time in between to enable the athlete to do whatever they need to do. If it's walking in a circle, if it's walking back and forth, if it's jumping around a little bit, as long as it's safe and as long as the environment permits it, totally cool, right? We want the athlete to have enough time to be set up in a way that is conducive to their best possible performance right now. So those are a few different strategies that we have when the athlete is getting dysregulated during transition, when we know that the athlete may have difficulty when they're coming into the session or in between sets of exercises. This is going to be individualized to the athlete, but there are still basic best practice principles that we can follow. I'd love to know what you think of this, if it has in fact been helpful for you, or if you're thinking about incorporating any of these protocols into your current programming and you have more questions, leave those in the comments below. If you have topics that you'd like me to cover in a future video, leave those in the comments below. Also, one of my favorite things to do is answering those questions, and I am on, along with Coach Cece Anaya, on Instagram Live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to cover different topics and to answer all of your questions as well. So find me on the on Instagram at the Autism Fitness. And as always, I thank you for watching. If you are ready to become an Autism Fitness Certified Pro anywhere in the world, go to autismfitness.com to learn all about the Pro certification, what you get, and how to start your coursework immediately. And you can join our global movement for movement. I am Autism Fitness founder Eric Chessen, leading that movement for movement. Thank you very much for watching.